Good evening. So we're out in our Cathedral of Trees. Temperature's 80 something. I was up in the 90s. It came close to if it didn't hit 100, and the air quality is pretty good, and there's the slightest breeze, so it's comfortable out. And going in the evening, it's a good time because, like, as it gets later, you have the light, and the temperature can drop 10 degrees or more. So that's ideal where I am. And it's probably pretty true where you are, that the temperature improves. Now, I guess I was half listening to the talking heads on Sunday, as I do. And I use C-SPAN because no thought involved. From noon on, they play all the talk shows, the top talk shows, about 45 minutes without the ads. And then whatever topic they're discussing that day, that's the other 15 minutes, and then they go into the next show. And on Fox, and this is probably one of the few ways that I still listen to Fox, is Shannon Breen, I think that's her name, was the host. And I thought, and this is my criticism of the political religious, that they manipulate it, to promote an image that they have, which is not true. So, for example, this host volunteered, and soon, when I leave here, I'm on my way to church. Now, why would you say that? I don't know, and it seemed clumsy too, meaning the way she did it. I suppose it could be something you'd say, and you say, well, that's natural, but it didn't seem natural. It felt manipulative. And I'm not religious. I'm closer to Oppenheimer, being an ethical humanist. I think I probably wouldn't have the patience to go to the schools that he did, but obviously it didn't hurt his intellect. On my way to church, I also rankle when I hear ads and they say, and we're a Christian business. I don't know what that means. I suppose it's an advertisement. And what I do remember from the Jesuits is that if you wear your hair shirt and it's concealed, then you are paying a penance, if you will, or suffering a discipline, but you're not publishing it to the world. And but if you wear the hair shirt outside, or you whip yourself in public, then you're getting the reward in this world, and you have no right to expect it in the next. That doesn't seem to apply to very many of these political Christians. They want to get it now and in public. And I'm not sure there is anything to get afterwards, but the debate whether the end of life is a pause or a full stop shouldn't change who you are today. In fact, it should be liberating, because this is where you get it right. And if anything else of consequence happens, so be it. In the category of what do you think is right or wrong, have you followed this Governor Doug Burgum from North Dakota? He's a piece of work. In order to get on the stage for the debate when they have it, you have to get a certain percentage. And so what has old Governor Doug done? He's gone out and he says if you give $1 to his campaign, he will give you $20. In other words, it's a false support. He is literally buying support, clearing, and the person who engages in this clears $19. So, and that is the basis of why he would be on the stage to debate with others, because of the numbers. And I heard him on the talking head shows saying, this is what you got to do. Some of these guys are known and they're governors. Yeah, that's why we vote for them. Not any of the Republicans in my case, but isn't it a factor that a candidate for office should have a resume and experience that reveals they could actually do the job? So Do you think the governor of North Dakota, that's a good basis to become the president of the United States? I don't know. And he's basically a businessman, and we just had a peek at his ethics. I'll buy your support so I can cheat this system and seem to reflect that I have a support that justifies me running for president. So, get rid of him. He's not worth it. But what do we expect from these guys? Now, I don't like Chris Christie. He angers me. And I'm sure maybe not as much as anybody who couldn't get across the George Washington Bridge because of his antics. And a lot of people because of what he stands for. His beach wear is not his problem. It is that he closed the beaches to everyone else. So I don't think a lot of Chris Christie. But it strikes me that he may have chosen the only strategy by which he can possibly be the nominee. That is to say, the other candidates are not getting any traction. So if the public decides, the Republican public, not me, if the Republican public decides, hey, Trump's no good, who can I go for? When all the others are little mimi-me's of Trump, they might say, hey, Chris Christie. He was the one who was against Trump because of all that he'd done wrong. And Chris Christie has policies that are not as nuts as DeSantis. And by the way, in polls in the state, in Florida, DeSantis is now behind Trump. That's got to be spectacular. But I think that's who he is. He's an also-ran. He's in over his head. He has the morals of some evil twin. And he's prepared to sell his soul to be president. And we don't care what he does with his own soul, but what would he do with America? Those would be sufficient reasons not to support this character. So that's it. I thought I'd have a shout out to a couple of people that I know are watching. Chris and Lou, I hope you enjoy what I have to say today. Hope you're having a good day. From time to time, I've done that. So look forward to talking to you sometime soon. Trump's brought another lawsuit, not just now, it's been pending for a while, against CNN, claiming that accusing him of the big lie was defamatory because it compared him to Hitler. So far, I don't see any problem with this. It compared him to Hitler, and that is worth $475 million in damages. How would it be possible to hurt this guy's reputation? He's been impeached twice, prosecuted 3 times now, may get prosecuted in 2 more charges in Georgia and in D.C., and he thinks he has a reputation that's hurt by calling what he has to say the big lie. Lying is his mark of excellence. That's the one thing he does. Not always well, but he does it. He does it all the time about everything. Well, it shouldn't surprise you the judge threw the case out of court. Bye-bye, Trump. Got to find something else to deal with. In the category of should we think something's really going to happen, the DA for Fulton County last Thursday, so only a couple of days ago, has encouraged them to secure the barriers around the courthouse. What does that tell you? Now, she also said, I told you I'd do this by September the 1st. That's her new imminence. But why would she be telling the courthouse, you better be secure like now? And it's also interesting that she's dealing, I think it's this Tuesday, with a motion by Trump. He'll do as well as he's done elsewhere when he's made motions to honest judges, I suppose. He's making a motion to the judge to disqualify her from the case. Well, that's going to go nowhere. And then the other one is an attack on the special grand jury, which I never would have called, but I don't think there's a defect in the calling of it, and I don't think given what Trump does every day, talking about the cases, I don't think it's possible to claim that the government is polluting the jury pool when you hear and see what Trump is doing, basically trying to rally the nation to his support and impeach the jury pool, but in his direction. Anyhow, I think both of those things will go by the side of the road. I think if Willis is really imminent this time, he could be indicted this week in Georgia. What a shame, Fulton County. And the grand jury question is a make-weight. By no stretch of the imagination does what little was said about its inquiry compare to all the stuff that's been published, including the tape recordings that'll be a large part of that case if Trump is the named defendant, which we all expect, because one juror did come out and say, well, you won't be surprised. Well, I will if he's not the one, but that's that story. In unfinished business, I have two things on my mind. One is John Dingell, and the other, well, this is all part of one thing. One thing is John Dingell. John Dingell was a member of Congress, and at the same time, he sat on the board of the NRA. And he was as much a mastermind as he could be of their efforts to move from a group of people, hunters, that were just concerned about, how they should use their guns, training, safety, and so forth. And they changed it all. They made it an issue that every person should be able to have a gun. And if you try to limit our use of guns, well, we'll show you. And this came into effect during the Columbine hearings. And I was on the Hill at the time, and I was working with Zoe Lofgren, and that was one of my issues to help her with. And let me immediately say that Zoe doesn't need help, but a dialogue and research done in combination is usually a better product. So, but this is not about Zoe or about what we were doing. The Democrats hold a caucus, and during the caucus they talk about strategy and presentations and so forth. And I thought it was dead wrong that when we were considering legislation after Columbine, where you may remember these, I think it was 12 high school students were killed in 1999. And I came up to the Hill in 96 for a project for Chuck Schumer, and which I was his special counsel. And then I kept doing things for a while, and Zoe and I ended up working together. And it was a terrific arrangement. I enjoyed it very much. So what do we have? Dingell would come to these caucuses among the Democrats discussing the strategy of how they could deal with Columbine, what remedies would make sense. And Dingell would come in and he would argue with us, but he would also be there in these confidential proceedings, not concerned at all about the conflict. And in my opinion, he killed a compromise that was better than what we came up with. And I have a very low regard for him, at least on this issue, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to anything else he did. And once when I was on MSNBC, there was a host that I think took umbrage at my criticism of Dingell. It was the end of a segment, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it, so I could know. So maybe I just misread the cues. It's not Ari or so anyhow, there was that, but it was really more about Dingell. I think Dingell betrayed his constituents by being a member of the board of the NRA and working on their behalf, not the people's behalf. And finally, not that anyone needs it, there are reports, and this didn't happen overnight, that Mesopotamia, if you had a teacher like I did, you were taught this was the cradle of civilization, and the cradle is running dry of water. And the New York Times has a terrific segment on it today. But it's just one more example. The examples flow, these terrible examples of heat and suffering and compromise. And I circulated a movie yesterday, or a link to it, or notice about it. And basically, what public don't seem to get, or they feel they can't help the problem because the politicians won't, because no business wants to take a cut in profits, and they're just fine with the fact that the whole planet may become a cinder in 25 or 50 years. And it's no solace to anybody who's longer in the tooth to think that after them, children and grandchildren will suffer because our governments did nothing. And so as the cradle of civilization is compromised and may fade, so will every government on the planet. And as soil is where our food comes from, and water is what nurtures and keeps us alive, if we squander our talent and resources on compromising soil and water and the air and the environment, I personally may not pay the cost, but the world will. And what we have, and there was an interview today on the Talking Heads about Biden, and the criticism was he gives with one hand and takes with the other. So he gives an environmental message on one thing, and he opens up areas for mining and stuff like that. And the rule of thumb as to preservation going forward is, if you're going to allow the use of fossil fuels, and that's basically coal and oil and gas, you're going to continue to destroy the planet. It's not a question, it's a certainty. It's as certain as gravity. It's as certain as magnetism. It's as certain as heavenly bodies circle around each other in the most complicated ways, involving their mass and magnetism. Things that nobody still can understand or quantify. There's no uniform theory of all of this, but we do know when the planet is not changing in climate, it's warming. And heat is the product of our failures to redress the problems with the environment. So, I will celebrate my walk in the Cathedral of Trees while we still have it. All the best. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.